Thank you for staying with us. We're all we have. Hello.
So says Jimmy.
But are we not all we have?
Do we have another country?
No.
Good.
Okay. We're all we have. Now, the Nigerian poultry industry says it's on the verge of collapse, as it may be losing almost trillion naira.
Wow.
While at least 1 million jobs are being threatened. We'll discuss the reason behind this fear that they're already talking about in this next segment. And to help us understand what's happening is Mr. Raymond Isiadinso, President, Feed Industry Practitioners Association of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Also joining us this time via Skype is Paul Ilona, who is Country Director, Harvest Plus. Hello, Paul.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Let's start with you, Mr. Isiadinso.
Yeah.
Why this? I mean, the poultry industry is already saying we're about to die.
Doomsday.
Yeah.
Because we're likely to be losing 1 trillion naira annually. I mean, is the poultry industry in Nigeria that massive?
Thank you once more. To me, I think saying that we are losing 1 trillion naira is an understatement.
Oh.
Yeah, we are talking of an industry that is worth over 10 trillion naira as of today, statistically. And it's on book, and you want me to analyze that further, I can tell you that. So saying it is 1 trillion naira, I think, is a very big an understatement. Okay. So, and if you ask me if it is that big, I will tell you yes, because that's the. If you look at the collective input or improvement in the GDP of the economy, it has been on steady upswing for some time. You know, apart from oil, and apart from let me call it IT, the next is poultry industry.
Yeah, but Raymond, if the poultry industry can generate that kind of money, how come we're still importing poultry?
Now, that is what we are crying. The government gave us an open check that we should influence internally amongst us, you know, within ourselves, the stoppage of importation of poultry. And we rallied around the stakeholders, we rubbed our minds, and we told ourselves we can do this. If we get government backing in some policies, and government actually, the administration of President Buhari, from initial policies they brought out by clamping down on importation of poultry meat, people now realize that actually the government on seat is serious, because you cannot be playing the good one in the day, in the night you masquerade as another thing. So the government came up with a policy that we, the stakeholders, saw and visioned as very, very supportive. So everybody amassed funds from diaspora, from internal, and whatever, to establish what we have today as a huge and sprawling industry. And that is the industry that is about to collapse, just like a pack of cards. Yeah.
Mr. Ilona, what is the reason for this imminent collapse that you all are talking about?
Well, when you look at the collapse of the poultry industry that my friend has just alluded to, you would not digress it totally away from the cost of feeds. And I think that is the angle from which everyone today is looking at it. The cost of feeds in the very recent past has shot up, and the poultry industry depends a lot on maize to produce feed for their poultry. And I know eventually this will dovetail into looking at the recent policies on the importation of maize into Nigeria. And I think there's been so much hue and cry around that. But I'm not in the poultry industry, but then they remain very good friends of mine. I'm not a farmer, but again, I work with millions of farmers in the country. And so I'm going to play a middleman role. So really, the poultry industry, like my friend put it through, is very important. It's a very huge sector in the country. But at the same time, the farming sector, the maize industry, is a very huge sector. So for me, I think we should start looking at how to come to a balance. I really don't see anything wrong with having a policy that can spur production over time and eventually bring down price. You may have challenges in the very early stage, and that's when farmers want to take advantage of the new policy to hike up prices. And that's what we're seeing in the system today. I know that in the very recent past, the price of maybe a ton of maize was just about 100,000 naira to 120,000 naira. The current price in the market has gone up to 165 to 180,000 naira. And so we expect one of the primary users of maize in the country to shout around it. And this is why I'm not surprised that the poultry industry is very much worried, because it's going to affect the access to raw materials, which will eventually kill the industry. So while we show pity to the poultry industry, we also want to understand that farmers have been marginalized over the years, and they see this as an opportunity for them to scale production, for them to have value for their inputs. And, you know, from the farmer's perspective, if you look at the cost of production for 1 ton of maize, it's almost at par with the market price, with what the market offers. And this is what has kept that sector down for quite some time. So I think we should come to an agreement, all right? And then, but again, what should worry Nigerians is the fact that just a while ago, the price of maize was just about 9,000 naira per 100 kg, and just all of a sudden it has gone to 16,000 naira. So the question is, who is driving this? Again, this is why we should be looking at price control in the system. This is why even at the point the federal government came up with that policy, they should have looked at the effect it could have and begin to discuss how to ensure that everybody enjoys some benefit from the policy.
Mr. Elona, let me bring this back to you. When you say the farmers have been marginalized, and then there should be a level playing field, so to speak, for both the farmers and those in the poultry industry to come together and work together. In June, for instance, the central bank included maize importation in the list of items that have been banned from importation into the country. That should give room to the local farmers to bring out their produce. But the question is there capacity, and you say you work with all the farmers, is there capacity to grow enough maize for both the industry, the poultry industry, and the pharmaceutical industry, and indeed those that consume maize directly?
Well, let me approach your question from this direction. FAO data shows that Nigeria produces about 12 million metric tons of maize now. And then it also shows that the volume of import of maize into Nigeria hovers around 0.5 million metric tons. So you see, what is imported is just about 1.2% of our total production. So if you ask me, I think the problem lies with our own internal organization to address the needs of all the market sectors there. But what you then find is that today we have a number of Nigerian businessmen who have made who are making living from importation. We have a number of them who have, I will call them larger, big cartels, and who will do anything to ensure that maize is brought into the country because of the cheap price at which they get maize from outside the country. Now, for the farmers, I maintain this is not very good. But again, for the farmers, hiking up prices because you have an opportunity does not also solve the problem. And so we have to address, the way Nigerians look at policies and the way we see policies growing our businesses. Nigerians have the local capacity to produce even up to 20 million metric tons of maize. We saw it happen in the rice sector. We saw it. Very simple policy, and many farmers are on board. And you look at the value chain, the microprocessors, the small-scale processors, the medium-scale processors, and the large-scale processors.
Okay,
all
Mr.
of this
Lona,
will drive many more farmers to want to produce maize for you in the country.
Mr. Lona, let me just come back to you here. We'll get to you, Mr. Sheldon. The matter here, while the farmers are growing 12 metric tons of maize locally, or just about 0.5 is imported into the country. Yes, that's fantastic news, fantastic data to have. But the issue of movement from the point of production to the market becomes a problem, becomes a challenge. So the farmers are having that challenge. Middlemen step in here to buy at a very low price from the farmers to sell at a high price. So is it the farmers that are hiking their prices or the middlemen?
Is the question for me, please?
Yes.
Oh, thanks a lot. Now, there is no doubt that the middlemen cartel in Nigeria is playing very significant role in driving prices of commodities. At the moment, we cannot attribute the hike in price to just the effect of the middlemen who are engaged in bulky maize in Nigeria. I think the fact that the policies on ground touched almost all the key players in the value chain. What you find is that yes, the policy comes up and farmers see it as a new avenue to hike their price. But then you cannot totally eliminate the role of the middlemen. So, but then for me, this is also where the government should come in. Our price control boards, and we don't know what they are doing today. At the point a new policy is coming up, we should sit down and look at the potential effect it could have, and look at what could happen that will need some immediate mitigation. Otherwise, it's going to cause problem along the whole value chain. So middlemen, yes, they are primary price dictators in the country. But I think the farmers also have benefited from that price hike. But I agree with you. The primary drivers remain the middlemen. No doubt about it. But okay. Again, if you then ask why,
Mr. Lona, we will get back to you. Let's bring in Raymond here. This matter, the farmers, he said the farmers are marginalized. You sound like you were not really in agreement with him.
Yeah, is it the poultry farmers or the crop?
The crop farmers.
Maize farmers.
You need maize for your feed. 50 to 70%.
Exactly. So, to me, ab initio, there has been a very good relationship, rapport between the upstream users of the seed crop called maize and the downstream producers, which are the farmers. What I want to say here at this point in time is that the maize farmers cannot speak of being marginalized because they have got all the government assistance, they have got fertilizers given to them, they have got the, what is it called? The land is there, the planting season is there and all that. The price has been 95,000. Just it alternates between 95 in the heavy planting, heavy availability season, and 120 during a little, off season, so to say. But going up to 160, 200,000, and, with propensity of going further is what is worrisome, and not even seeing it up till now. So if you ask me what Mr. Lona has said, actually there is a criminal aspect of what is going on now. Because we were in a lockdown, of course, we are in essential services. All of a sudden, the maize skyrocketed. This is the peak production season. This is the peak season of need for maize. And continuously, if you ask me, maize inclusion in animal feed is about 70%. Are you getting it? Somebody somewhere is tinkering with already laid down processes of flow from the production, which is up north mainly, to the utilization point, which is the down south here. I have to tell you, somebody somewhere. And the effect, if this is not checked now, is a total collapse. As I talk to you, a farm of about 25,000 beds in Badagry has closed down. Because, if you talk of the total inclusion or percentage contribution to what is fed to animals, maize takes 70% or even upwards. So if you deny that to birds or you deny that to farmers, the remaining 30% is very easy to get. So there will be a total close down of farms. And the whole value chain, what we call value chain that is already intertwined and performing, stabilized, is already getting distorted.
But Raymond, isn't the news that the central bank banned importation of maize, isn't it good news to the industry?
It is not. I have to tell you, agriculture is not a fashion, it's a culture.
But
it's not a fashion that you change, you wake up and change what...
But we have been told that the total imported maize is only about 1%.
No, that is...
So that's a very small quantity.
No, they are not good with their statistics. I can tell you right away that total demand for maize is about 15 million metric tons. And Nigeria produces about 10.5 metric tons. Are you getting it? So there is a huge shortage of about 4.5 metric tons.
Is that what is
important? And this is supposed to be augmented by importation. America imports maize, China imports maize. These are advanced countries. They import from Chile, they import from Argentina, in the grain belts.
But Raymond,
why can't we be allowed?
If maize farmers know that there'll be uptakers, certainly they'll be willing to produce maize.
Yeah, but
and more people will be willing to go into maize farming.
We are not trying to destabilize the government policy of supporting local production. That is not what we are saying. But what we are saying or clamoring to the administration is to give or open up the grain reserves, give licenses to the, can I call it, established individuals, stakeholders. They know the government, I shouldn't teach the government how to run their business. Give licenses to import this gap of 4.5 million that is creating problems.
Just hold
for a while.
Just hold your thoughts. Yeah. We'll take a moment and come back to look at this idea of opening up the grain reserves, yet still give license to those that will import the shortfall of 4 million metric tons. We'll take a moment, please, to stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're still looking at this matter of maize production and the poultry industry in Nigeria. Mr. Isiadin, so you said before we went on that break, and Mr. Elena, we're still coming to you. Please don't go anywhere. You said before we went on that break, you're asking the federal government to open up the strategic grain reserves.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're saying they should also give room for importation of maize.
Yeah.
Are you not speaking from the two sides of the
No, that's what I tried to clarify, that it's either of the two.
Okay,
either of the two.
Okay.
Are you getting it?
Okay.
70,000 metric tons, to me, is like a scratch.
No,
This is
that was recently.
Yeah, the federal government released 70,000 metric tons. It's like a scratch to what we are asking for. So actually, the federal government, through its policymakers and advisors to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Rural whatever, should look at the two options. If there is a grain reserve, the federal government should release grains to poultry farmers at this critical point of need. Right now, without much ado, because what they have encouraged through their policies from the onset to build up is collapsing. Are you getting it? Maize is a nightmare. And you see birds, people have cultured birds like their babies. Or in the alternative, you open up, give licenses. And don't forget, why we are saying give licenses, it has a cycle time. You have to open up from M, you have to import, you have to clear and discharge. Before this will come in, there will be we will be at a critical stage.
Is there no alternative to maize?
Well, the alternative, we do not produce it to optimal level. The alternative is wheat, sorghum, cassava pills.
But they produce all of this in the northern part of the country.
Even all over, but that is what a common man, a layman, you see maize grown on the road, will create an impression that will produce enough of what we would need. But statistically, it does not meet the demand.
Mr. Ilona, we again, you said earlier, from what you said earlier, 12 million metric tons. Mr. Isiadinso has said that we still do not produce enough for what is needed in country. So it's either the reserves are opened or licenses are given for importation. And I ask the question, what's the alternative?
Well, I think from my end, we should look for what can be sustained in the years to come. To achieve good national development, we cannot base it on another country's economy. And like I said earlier on, we've seen it happen to the rice sector. So again, maybe just to quickly remind my friend, the bulk of the over 12 million metric tons of maize produced in Nigeria, again, is consumed by the poultry industry. The figures are available to show that. And if you look at the import bills presented for 2018 and 19, it doesn't show that you import much more than the figures I quoted earlier on. And the third thing here again is that if you look at the average yield the farmer gets, the average from FAO record shows that it's about 1.7 metric tons per hectare. And so if you are buying at 95,000 naira per hectare, that is much less than 170,000 naira gross income to the farmer, gross income. If you remove his operational costs, which will not be less than 120,000, 130,000 naira, the net return to the farmer at the end of the year is just about 30,000, 40,000 naira. How do you think a household can survive at that income level? So I think we should be working together to see how we can increase the average yield of maize per hectare in Nigeria. And this is where the research institutions should come on board, and then the input dealers should come on board. What are we not doing right? How can we double the current yield of maize in Nigeria? Because if we achieve that, to a large extent, the case of importation will go down the drain. I'm not against opening the reserve to provide a cushion to the poultry industry. And that is because, again, I would say the policy came up abruptly. And for me, I think that there was no plan put in place to ensure that all those operating within the maize sector would have their problems cushioned. And I think this is why the poultry industry is really very badly touched. But I think we should look at things from a more nationalistic perspective. And so when we clamor for licenses to be provided and what have you, while they provide very temporary panacea, they create major problems that the country will face in the very near future. So we need more inclusive understanding of why the ban was put in place. And we need to work with the federal government to see what can be done And I think going the way of talking very closely with the community associations, which include basically your Maize Association of Nigeria and Magma Pan. They should talk to their members. We should talk to the aggregators so that they can talk to their members. If we can address the current price hike in the maize sector, I think more maize will be made available to the poultry industry. I think these are my own views.
Paul, would government intervention affect all this? So that if government does what it did in the rice sector, for instance, would that help mitigate this?
I very much agree with you. Every policy must go with a package. Every policy must be supported to be sustainable. All right. And I think this is where the government should come on board. This is when we should be talking about having a maize initiative in the country. This is when we should look at the Anchor Borders program, the NISA, lending entities, and repackage them such that they're able to support this policy. But I'm sorry to say that, one thing that we've not addressed so far as Nigerians is the way we react to developmental issues. It's our mindset. It's our preparedness to take advantage of a system. All right, and for me, I still don't have any justification for why the price of maize would almost have doubled within a matter of 2-3 months. Right. So if the government can come in with some support on how to address price hikes, it happened in the case of rice. But then because rice is not a major raw material in the industries, and this is why the case of maize is very, very serious. But all in all, any strategy we are bringing on board should be to sustain the policy. And I can assure you that as farmers go back to the fields now, as they see the policy as creating new markets for them, then what you'll find is that by next year, the price of maize will crash. And I think this is also where those of us in the poultry industry should make some commitment, should understand that this is all about national development. We should bear some pains at this stage while we allow the system to stabilize. If we don't do this, then every year we'll be going around the same cycle. Importing maize into Nigeria is not the best thing for us to do. We should produce our own local maize and ensure that we are stabilized along food security needs and raw material security needs.
Okay, Raymond, are you in discussions, well, have you been in discussions with government since the ban in June?
Yes.
So how far have those gone?
Yeah, our association, through the FIPAN body association, which I'm their president, we have had series of contacts, series of meetings with the stakeholders, but with the government officers. Just like Mr. Ilona has said, this is an abrupt policy that is really affecting us. We have been in constant discussion with government, but it is not yielding any result up till now. And our industry is closing down. It's just like, one saying, I cannot breathe any longer. I cannot handle it any longer, yes. That is just what it is. And I want to be quick to say that the process that is on hand is the maize we are talking about has assumed a strategic status. Maize has assumed a strategic status. What do I mean by a strategic status? It implies that somebody knows that maize is very, very important for the livestock industry. Livestock industry has grown in leaps and bounds. It has outgrown the old statistics of whatever anybody is having on hand now. And with it is the demand and the requirement for maize need. So, government should not base its calculation. Anybody should not base its calculation on old statistics that they have. But we are talking that presently, everybody that is anybody in livestock is needing maize. And without maize, there is no sure stability in source of energy, which is critical in animal feed production. That is what we are saying. So we have spoken to the government. If I should go straight to what you say, we have not gotten any good response. So that is why we are crying out. A lot of our members are losing their great funds, and these funds are borrowed from the banks. Before you know it, there will be suicide commitment, So you see people committing suicide and whatever.
Importation of poultry has also been banned, am I correct?
Yeah, but it was a gradual policy. That's why I said that agriculture is not like a fashion. It's a culture. If you are implementing a policy, you give a policy guidelines. You don't just wake up a day and stampede or clamp down on maize importation. We are not saying, I think I want to speak out, use this medium to speak out. We in FIPAN or livestock farmers are not saying that the government should throw its window open for a continuous maize importation, because
it should be gradual.
Yeah, by back to back or front to back, it will affect us also. But we are saying at this critical point in time that licenses should be given to 3 companies to import, to augment for the shortage,
the shortfall.
For the shortfall. That is what we are saying. And you give those, they bring it in, and it is monitored through government agencies to mitigate against what we are having now, what we are going to experience. Because what they are running away from definitely will slip from the back so there will be shortage in protein needs. When there is lack of protein, the health status of the nation goes down. There is a dwindling in GDP of what livestock industry, which is the fastest growing subsector in agricultural industry, will contribute. We are talking of just one grain. Maize has assumed a strategic status. Soya has. And what do I mean by strategic status? With maize, if you have maize in large volume now, you can stifle anybody. That is what I mean by strategic status. Many industries are dependent on maize. Human beings eat it as a staple food due to hunger, poverty. A lot of value chain industries that are into food, producing maize-related products. There is a lot of malting and name it, and So going by this, population is increasing. So is the demand for the meat, and in return, the feed production is increasing to meet up with the. I know farms that have started broiler production, about 1.5 million broilers. What are they going to feed the birds with?
Okay, Ms. Alona, as we begin to wind down, what's the way forward?
Well, I think the way forward would be multifarious and multi-sectoral. So I think for Nigerians, it is to first understand that policies are required to scale up agriculture, to scale up our work in the country, and to reach out to that very rural poor farmer who needs some support. So at this point, therefore, we want to look at what each of the stakeholders along the value chain can do. So what we then expect here is that the seed companies will wake up and respond more to quality seed supply to farmers to help to boost their average yield per hectare in the country. Agri-input dealers also should be supported to ensure that farmers have access to sufficient fertilizers, herbicides, and others to help them reduce their operational costs. But then at the federal level, we also expect to see an increased financial support, I think under the Anchor Borers program and the NASAL program to support farmers producing maize in the country. We may have a lean period, which will affect the poultry industry. We can come together and agree that this year will be a very painful year. But can we have a national conference where the maize or where the poultry investors will provide the information on the quantity of raw materials they need to maize producers in Nigeria? Can we begin to become more targeted, right? So if MAN and Magma Pan know that the poultry industry will require additional 4 million metric tons, then I'm sure they're able to convert this into hectares, and then we can have a maize initiative that will strongly address that. In the immediate, yes, if the government is able to provide support from the granary, that would be great. But for me, it's not sustainable. But then again, for the poultry industry, their understanding that we should all make some contributions towards achieving a national growth is very, very important. If it's short term, like I think we're going to have it, we had it for rice. Short term, price of rice went up, and just 1 year after, the price of rice started crashing. Can we achieve it for maize? I think if we do that way to add value and to help the country to grow in agriculture.
All right, thank you. So, in closing.
Yeah. I want to say something to Mr. Ilona, my partner or my friend, that maize, the policies that have brought us to where we are, what he has spelled out cannot be achieved at this standpoint. That is under 30 days or 90 days. They are well and good to go. But at this standpoint, we need maize to sustain. We need grains to sustain our production going forward. Are you getting what I'm saying? So if somebody is saying we'll provide herbicides, we'll provide good crops and whatever, that you are saying stagnate the feed producers or the livestock producers, that all the farms should close until all these are met. And that is why we are demanding that why all these processes are put in place. The policy makers who have advised the federal government through CBN to stampede the importation of maize did not do well, and they do not mean well for livestock industry. So finally, I want to leave a word for whoever that cares to hear, that somebody should speak out, that government should come either to open grain reserve. It may not be the whole 4.5 metric tons shortfall. It could be about 500,000 metric tons or 1 million metric tons, at least to stabilize the situation. If somebody is very thirsty and he needs 10 cups of water, if you give him 5 cups of water, he gets stabilized and then waits for the other. That is what we are asking for in our livestock industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've been speaking with Raymond Isiadinso, President, Feed Industry Practitioners Association of Nigeria, and Paul Ilona, Country Director, Harvest Plus, that joined us via Skype. Thank you, gentlemen, for sharing today with us.
Thank you.
So, all right, we'll be back in a moment. Do stay with us.